days only months apart. Got summer waves and winter hearts. Yeah, we fall, but we spring right up. I was lost so long till I found out the path I walk is from above. It's all.
Welcome back. It is 11:37, and we are now going to be joined by Kaamil Alli. He's been on my show on and off over the past few years. Haven't talked with him in a long time, and I'm really pleased to have him on the show this morning. Okay, I don't see Kaamil Alli on my screen, so I guess my producers are still busy trying to get him on. But let me give you a bit of background on Kaamil. There he is. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program. Kaamil is a political activist, former Wits SRC and former Medical Students Association union president. He is also a member of the Gauteng Provincial Government's 4IR and Digital Transformation Advisory Panel. And here he is talking to us today about climate change. Now, it's quite different to the discussions we've had in the past, and I kind of wonder why. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program. Kaamil, can you hear me? Oops, we seem to be having a problem. Kaamil, you're on air. Please go ahead. All right, there seems to be a bit of a problem with connecting up with Kaamil. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Welcome.
Hear you, yes.
Okay. Finally, great.
That.
Not a problem. Great to be talking to you. But, when I was reading your article, I kind of wondered about the shift. I know you've been a political activist for a long, long time, and now you seem to have become an environmentalist, an environment activist. What's this all about and why?
Well, I think social justice is very much something that's close to me and close to my heart, and I'm very passionate about advocating for social justice. And in my journey of being a political activist, I was introduced to the climate justice arena, and I think that the very important lesson that I learned from engagements with other activists within the climate change space was that climate justice is social justice. So it's fundamentally tied to all the other work that I've been involved in, be it through the MSA, the Muslim Students Association, or the SRC at Wits. One very good example is during my term on the SRC, we had worked together with an organization or a structure at Wits University that had a food bank. And we know that food security and food sovereignty in South Africa is a very important pillar of social justice. So, I think that this is also a good conversation to have, because I think that many people tend to detach climate justice from social justice, which is a disservice to both, I think.
You're absolutely right. I'm thinking that, sadly, with the advent of COVID-19, it seems that other important issues seem, very especially climate change issues, seems to have taken a back seat. How important is it that we pursue this issue, and how much at risk are we here in South Africa if we don't get our ducks in a row, if we don't become savvy, if we don't start becoming proactive as far as these issues are concerned? How much damage is it going to do to us as a country, and how far ahead is the rest of the world as far as climate change is concerned?
Yeah, I think that South Africa stands in a very vulnerable position. I think that socioeconomically and sociopolitically, we have a very vulnerable group, a very vulnerable population. Our majority of our population don't have food security. Majority of our population don't have water security. We saw the near collapse of the Western Cape water supply system when they experienced their drought, and we were speaking about a potential day zero. Similar thing that's happening within the Eastern Cape, where water is really a scarcity, which is a problem. South Africa is generally quite a dry country, so the fact that we don't raise these issues sufficiently enough is a problem, and obviously the pandemic has exacerbated that because people's focus has shifted. Understandably so. I think that we do need to place the pandemic at the forefront, but we do need to start thinking about the other issues that face us. We have a huge potential problem because South Africa is surrounded by coastline. So if the ice caps at the Antarctic continue to melt, we are going to sit with a huge problem because we have cities, big cities at the coast. We have Durban, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth that could potentially be seeing rises in sea levels over the next few years if we don't. I mean, and I think that South Africa is a particularly unique player in the climate arena because unlike other developing countries, we have quite a high carbon footprint. That's due to our reliance on coal power for electricity. Europe and the rest of the world is moving very quickly, very far ahead of us. And if we don't do something about it soon, like with everything else, we're going to be left behind. And our people, the poor people of South Africa, are going to be the ones who are going to suffer.
Kaamil, you've raised a few issues there. I'm wondering, when we talk about climate change and when we talk about our carbon footprint, you also alluded to the coal mining industry. Are we not moving towards renewable fossil fuel or renewable energy of other sources? Also, the whole issue around, when we talk climate change, it seems people automatically think about plastic bags that are polluting our water systems, our lakes, our dams, our rivers, etc. Are we talking two totally different issues? Are we talking about two issues when they come together, just will create one huge explosion as far as the environment is concerned?
Yeah, so I think two things, right? The first is that our reliance on coal power is historic. So a move to renewable power is going to take time. And a lot of investment if we want to accelerate that process. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that the state is being very reactionary in trying to move towards renewable energy. I mean, we have a new independent power producer program, which is prioritizing renewable energy. But at the same time, we have the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources speaking about a nuclear deal. And it doesn't add up, because while nuclear energy is cleaner than coal, it's not something that our country needs. We have huge solar and wind power potential within the country. And like with Europe, the only way they were able to move from coal to renewable sources within a short space of time, or a relatively short space of time, because it still took them a few decades to get here, was investment. We look at the examples of Germany where billions of euros were invested in their move from coal power to renewable power. The same with Spain. So we need investment, like serious investment, if we are to move from coal power reliance to renewables. And the second thing is kind of, I think, around the formulation of climate change and how people perceive it. Yes, single-use plastics are exceptionally dangerous to the environment because they do, like you say, pollute water systems, pollute ecosystems. But it's not necessarily the only thing. And I think that it's problematic when we try to formulate and create the problem around individuals, when the biggest contributors to single-use plastic waste are actually corporations, big corporations who are not pulling their weight in the fight against climate change.
Kaamil, let's go back to the whole issue around nuclear energy. You indicated that it is a cleaner type of energy. Are there cost implications? And then when we look around the world, very especially Iran, where the rest of the Western world wants to shut down their uranium enrichment plants, etc., why why do the rest of us feel threatened by nuclear energy?
Well, I think for South Africa in particular, one has to do a needs analysis, because I think that perhaps Iran doesn't necessarily have the kind of renewable energy power that we do. I'm not exactly sure, which is why they would need a nuclear power supply that's a bit more expensive than ours. South Africa is in no way in need of such power supply or power source. And it is very expensive. Nuclear power is very expensive. It's expensive to buy, it's expensive to maintain, and it's expensive to dispose of. Because I think that the disposal is also a huge issue because, again, we're talking about radioactive waste that could have a further harmful impact on ecosystems and on people where this waste is to be disposed. I think in terms of the threat, I think that it's global superpowers really that would feel threatened by anyone else having the kind of access to nuclear power in a very different sense, like the States, which is why I think that the Iran issue is a bit of a different issue than and it's a bit deeper than just power supply.
Okay, you are in the 4IR space at the moment. How does it tie in with your social activism? And when you talk 4IR, I kind of think very futuristic things and imagine that if we want to get South Africa possibly in line or in step with first world countries, we need to be 4IR savvy, but at what cost in terms of the environment?
Exactly, and I think that's exactly my interest in the 4IR space. So with the fourth industrial revolution, we're seeing a whole lot of new technologies and expansion of technologies that were introduced in the third industrial revolution, like the internet and things like that. But importantly, a huge part of 4IR is adopting technologies that are dependent on power. So what we want to do is, in shifting our industry to Industry 4.0, we need to shift our power sources to power source, sort of, if you want to name it like that, 4.0, which is cleaner and renewable energies. With the dawn of 4IR, we're going to see a huge adoption of electric vehicles, for example. So it's important that we have a stable electricity supply in order to power those vehicles. But it's also important that the supply of that electricity is clean and renewable so that it doesn't harm the environment. It's like the same with all the other kind of power supply that we would need within the fourth industrial revolution, powering smart homes, smart vehicles, smart trains, all those kind of things. We need a clean source of power. So this is where sort of activism ties in with the fourth industrial revolution. At the same time, what we're seeing with 4IR and the COVID-19 pandemic is that there's huge job losses within our society. Already struggling economy that's struggling to create jobs. We are losing a lot of jobs. And a move to renewable energy is also going to come at a cost for jobs within the coal mining and the coal sector, which employs, I think it's about 90,000 workers at the moment in our country. So we need to come up with ideas and strategies and plans that's going to mitigate those job losses. And as we term it in the Climate Justice Charter, create a deep, just transition. So we want to move, but we want to move in a way that is just and a way that sustains jobs and creates new jobs for people.
Is government on board? Do they realize just how important this issue is? And if they don't come on board now, we're going to be left way behind with a whole host of problems. And when I talk government, I also wonder about Eskom and its role, because you spoke about electric cars and smart homes, the smart ways that the future, we as beings are going to be living in a smart future, so to speak. Our entire environment is going to be smart, electrified. It ain't going to happen if Eskom doesn't come on board and you don't have government's full support.
100%. And I think that that's been the challenge. I mean, I think it was Auto Trader who did a survey on South Africa's appetite for electric vehicles, and one of the chief obstacles to the adoption by South Africans of electric vehicles was the sort of fear of Eskom and an unsustainable electricity supply. So, I mean, the solution is there. I think that Eskom's problems, the constant need for maintenance at coal power plants, the constant need to pump money into Eskom for these expensive coal power plants, it has a solution, and that solution is renewable energy. So, like I mentioned earlier, government's role will be to invest heavily into renewables in order for them to create a plan, and I think that should be. I think the government's aware of the problem. I think they know very well what the problems are in terms of power supply and in terms of climate change. There's this term that's very frustrating for activists. It's called political will, and I think that that's deeply lacking within the state at the moment. Just the will to actually do something, to get up and do it, because you know what the problem is. South Africans, activists, civil society are providing with very real solutions. So it's just time to get up and do it.
Kaamil, earlier on you alluded to the fact that the culprits as far as a clean and a healthy environment are the large industries, obviously. But I think collectively, if civil society gets together, because we're talking about a population of between 55 to 60 million people, and if even a quarter of that number are active in this space, obviously they're creating a huge issue around waste and polluting of the environment. What do you want to see citizens, how to become more active and more conscious in this space, and ensure that we become activists in our own right and we make a difference in our own homes, and then just make that circle grow bigger and bigger and bigger and have a huge impact on the country as a whole?
And I think that's an important point, because I think that one of the fundamental tenets of the Climate Justice Charter is that the just transition is community-led. So it's led by communities who live within these spaces every day, who know what their problems are, who have solutions but just need some kind of backing. So I think that would be my biggest call is for communities to organize themselves, because I think that in many ways we tend to do things on our own, and while doing things on our own is very important, we need mobilization and people to activate around this issue. So there's the Daily Maverick is currently doing a series of called the Climate Justice Series, is try to raise awareness about this. And if people can pick up on that and try to spread awareness about it, do sort of, I think, perhaps off air I can give you the details of one of the leaders of the Climate Justice Charter who's doing amazing work. Her name is Courtney, and I think that we can maybe get in touch with her and try to do some kind of community activity. You can put our contact details online. I'll give you my contact details so that we can have like community engagement, educate people a bit more about this issue, and try to take it from there. Because I think that the climate crisis is now. It's not something that's in the future, something that we have time to sort of address. The crisis is happening as we speak. And if we don't do anything about it now, if we as communities, as people, don't do anything, if we wait for the state to get that political will, I think that we're going to have even bigger problems.
For those people who can afford it, would you suggest solar heating, solar power, so to speak? You often hear things like, it will pay off for itself because it's expensive. It comes at a price. It will pay off for itself in 2 or 3 years' time. And those people have big enough stands or gardens to introduce borehole water. Is this an option? And can civil society be kind of comforted in the knowledge that going forward, they're not going to be penalized for the use of their own solar power and their own borehole water?
Well, I'm not 100% certain about the regulations around the use of borehole water. But solar power, 100%. I think that if you're looking for an alternative, solar is 100% the best way. And yes, an interesting stat is that solar power the price of solar power and solar technology has dropped 89% since 2009. Ooh. So it's becoming more and more accessible to more people. So I think that, yes, 100%, it's definitely needed. If you are able to, and by all means, get off the grid, supplies electricity to your neighbors at a cost, all those kind of things.
Right.
Let's make things more accessible, because I think that that's the way that we need to be going. We need to start taking ownership and responsibility for our own situation.
Are you confident that civil society would be conscientized enough to start taking matters in their own hands, to start being activists? Each and every one of us become activists in this space.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good work being done. The South African Food Sovereignty Campaign, the Cooperative and Policy Alternative Center, these are NGOs and civil society organizations that are doing immense work, very good work. The Ahmed Kathrada Foundation is doing incredible work with the youth activism programs within Johannesburg specifically. And hopefully that kind of culture spreads, because I think that being in this space for as long as I have been, I was initially quite despondent that things are quite bad, but South African civil society is moving, and it's actually the government that's dragging its feet, unfortunately. So I am confident. I am hopeful that we as people in South Africa are going to take ownership of our future.
What do you want to leave us with your final message for today? I
think just for everyone to get access to the Climate Justice Charter. It's an incredible document. It's something that, charterism is very entrenched within South African society. We look at business charters, the Freedom Charter, and now we have a new charter. We have the Climate Justice Charter, and it has within it all the solutions that we're looking for. So if people are able to just get access to it and spread the word about it, I think that in itself will be doing a huge justice to what we need to be doing moving forward in terms of climate change and the climate crisis that we're faced with.
We'll be watching you and obviously the type of work you're doing very closely. Thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for having me.
My pleasure entirely. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
It's exactly 12 o'clock, and next on the show, we're going to be talking GBV issues. We're going to talk to an author. Her name is Mumtaz Mahal Suleiman, about her life as a victim of abuse.